I was planning on doing a video on one of my favorite teams that I have loved watching so far this year, the Cleveland Cavaliers, but we all can have nice things because some very unfortunate news broke yesterday, and it was kind of what we all expected if you watched the clip from the game on Tuesday night between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New Orleans Pelicans. Backup point guard and starter over the last 3 games at least, Ricky Rubio, tore his ACL. Unfortunately, it is the same ACL that he tore in his rookie year. He is obviously done for the season, and first of all, on a human level, I feel bad for Ricky Rubio because it's an unfortunate major injury that is coming during his unrestricted free agency. And also, I'm sure he was enjoying his time in Cleveland because the Cleveland Cavaliers have kind of been a really pleasant surprise this year. I did a podcast earlier this year with co-host of the Locked On Cavs podcast and independent writer for Write Down Euclid, one of my good friends, Evan Damerel. We talked about the Cavaliers for a good hour and a half. We really didn't have much expectations for this team before the season started. We thought they would be a fringe play-in team, but they morphed into what I thought was a legitimately good Eastern Conference team that at one point was the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. And Ricky Rubio was a big part of that. And it was kind of a happy accident for Ricky Rubio because he got traded from the Suns to the Thunder to the Timberwolves and then to the Cavaliers, all within the span of like a year and a half. And I wouldn't say he wasn't unhappy that he was traded to Cleveland. It was kind of just one of those things where he was like, man, I'm keep getting traded. I want to go to a playoff contender. And he ended up on a playoff contender, and he was a big reason why the Cavaliers were a playoff contender. And this injury is pretty devastating just basketball-wise on the court for the Cavs. The Cavaliers decided to go with a 3-big lineup, and honestly, when I first heard that before the season started, I did not think it was going to work. I made jokes about it, but there's just something to be said about getting all your best players on the floor, even if they skew big. And the Cavaliers kind of found this accidental formula that worked. The Cavaliers found their big 3 of the future with obviously Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, who looks the part of a generational defender, and Jarrett Allen, who is also one of the elite defenders in the NBA period, not just for bigs. And it all kind of worked. And over the last month and change, the Cavaliers started finding themselves on offense because all year they have been a really good defensive team, especially in the month of December. They have just been absolutely dominant on the defensive end. But I didn't think it was a coincidence that when Colin Sexton went down with his injury that the Cavaliers started finding themselves a bit offensively starting in December, because after the Sexton injury, then Mobley got hurt, Jarrett Allen missed a few games, Lauri Markkanen missed a few games. But what the Sexton injury did was it gave Darius Garland complete control of the team. It's firmly his team now. It moved Isaac Okoro to his natural shooting guard position, and Isaac Okoro was getting a little frisky on the offensive end before he entered health and safety protocol. And Ricky Rubio was playing in lineups with Darius Garland. And if you look at those lineups with Rubio and Darius Garland, the Cavaliers were just blowing the doors off of teams because Ricky Rubio is a good player. He's a good passer. He's a good floor general. Yeah, he's not as fast as he used to be laterally like he was in his younger days, but he was still a solid veteran point guard that knew what to do. He came off the bench. He developed chemistry immediately with Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley. Guys, young players like Mobley, I know Devin Booker has credited Ricky Rubio a lot when he was in Phoenix. Young guys like those need to play with an adult at the point guard position because they just know what to do. And Ricky Rubio provided that, and he was good. I have some numbers here when it comes to Darius Garland and Ricky Rubio playing together. The Garland, Rubio, and Lauri Markkanen, Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley lineup had an offensive rating of 141.8 per 100 possessions, and their defensive rating was 91.3, which was a net rating of plus 50. Now, granted, it was 79 possessions, but Rubio and Garland lineups in general have an offensive rating of 116.9 points per 100 possessions and a defensive rating of 100.3 points per 100 possessions, which is a net rating of plus 16.6. Ricky Rubio was a good player wherever he was placed in the rotation, and the Locked On Cavs guys did a good live show yesterday, and they also brought up this good point. There has been a resurgence with Kevin Love as being a backup big off the bench. He has been beating up dudes that are backups. He has been posting up. He has been shooting the three ball well. And also Cedi Osman, who last year was really bad. He has been tethered to Ricky Rubio's minutes, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Cedi Osman has been having a really good bounce back year. So they mentioned that they are interested in tracking how this injury would impact the bench guys, specifically Love and Osman, because again, Ricky Rubio and Kevin Love, they know how to work off of each other. They're veterans, so they're not your average run-of-the-mill bench players that you see in the NBA, and those bench lineups were killing. The Cavs were a plus 7.9 whenever Rubio was on the court. Rubio-Love lineups were a plus 9.6. Osman and Rubio were a plus 10.3. Basically, every main Cavaliers rotation guy is a plus. And for a young team like the Cavaliers, led by JB Bickerstaff, who also just signed an extension recently, there was just a lot of good vibes in Cleveland that I was enjoying along with the games because the Cavs were weird. The lineup, the three big lineups were working. Even when Lauri Markkanen went down, Dean Wade stepped in to kind of fill a facsimile of Markkanen's role, and that was working out well. The Cavs just had a lot of interesting pieces that needed to fit together a little bit, but I think the Colin Sexton injury earlier last month kind of made everything fall into place. But now I think this injury for the Cavs is just devastating because who's going to be the floor setter? Who's going to be the floor general? Who's going to be the secondary playmaker behind Darius Garland? Can Darius Garland take on more of a load as a playmaker? Are they going to have to go to point Isaac Okoro like they did in Summer League? I don't know. I don't know where the secondary playmaking is coming from. It might be playmaking by committee because Evan Mobley is a good passer. Jared Allen has really developed as a passer on the short roll. But this injury bums me out, man, because I really enjoyed watching the Cavaliers this year. They're one of the main teams I have watched this year. Just seeing how it was all going to work out. They were dominant defensively. The recent road trip that they were on earlier this month, they were just blowing the doors off of teams, like not even close, like at least plus 25-point leads. The Cavaliers had a dominant December. If you look at the offensive rating, they had a 116.8 offensive rating, which is fourth for that month. And their defensive rating, they were first out 101.3 per 100 possessions. And it's because of two main lineups. One, the Garland, Okoro, Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen lineups, which was a plus 13.9, and their offensive rating was good, and their defensive rating was dominant. And the lineup I mentioned earlier, where you take Okoro out of the lineup, and then you put Ricky Rubio in there, and they were just blowing the doors off teams. And Ricky Rubio was a big part of that. Obviously, the Cavs have their foundation with Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland, and they can build around that for the future. But there were other bench players like Ricky Rubio who kind of just kept the machine going, kept the oil running for the offense. And this is going to be a pretty big blow for a Cavs team that I thought was a move or two away from really making some noise in the Eastern Conference. And not like a cute, oh, you won the first two games of the first round. I legitimately thought the Cavs had a shot at not only beating their first-round opponent, but getting to the second round and scaring the absolute shit out of one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. But this is unfortunately the dark part of the NBA. Some crucial injuries happen, and then your chances just go right down the toilet. But the Cavs' future is very bright still. I really wanted to do a video on the Cavaliers because they were really one of my enjoyable League Pass teams this year. But man, this is just a bummer. And Ricky Rubio is also, he's a good player. He's a solid player. He would be a starting point guard on a lot of teams, and it just sucks. But now that injury's happened, I just wonder how it's going to affect everybody, and I do kind of worry about the short-term prospects of this season for the Cavaliers.